Hi everybody, welcome to Shivers. We're officially back after Halloween and all of these travels. I am under the weather, so bear with me. But today I really want to capture all of the things that I experienced last week with Alcatraz and the Winchester Mansion. I had a really cool opportunity to go to California and check some of these awesome places off my bucket list, so it feels only right to share it with you as well. So to get started with Alcatraz, the opportunity to go to Alcatraz is a little bit more touristy. You do have to take what they call a city cruise, but it's just a ferry from mainland San Francisco to the actual island of Alcatraz. It's only about a 5-minute ferry ride, but it takes a little bit longer because of so many people. But once you arrive on the island of Alcatraz, they do a little presentation, give you a lay of the land, and then set you off to explore on your own, which I do really appreciate. I like a guided tour for places like that, but it's much more fun when you get to take your own pictures and go at your own pace. So I really appreciated that. For the actual history of Alcatraz. So Alcatraz was built in 1850 for the US Army to use. They then turned it into a penitentiary in 1934 after selling it from the US Army to the US judicial system. And it closed in 1963 just due to high maintenance, high cost. Being able to keep them there was just not really feasible. There were apartment buildings on the actual land itself for the workers to live there because, again, it's an island. The water itself is really freezing ice cold. So back then, it wasn't super feasible to have boats go back and forth from the mainland to the island. So that is essentially why it closed. It was then taken over by a group of Native Americans in 1969 through 1971. So only 2 years, but they really did that as a protest to the US, to the land treaties. There's a couple of places that are on the island where they have marked like Reagan, which was President Reagan. They have marked like this land is free, this land is our land. So it was very much a push for free land, which is something that I did not know at all about before going to Alcatraz, that it was there. A lot of people do believe, myself included, that Alcatraz is haunted, but really it's surprising to know that it's kind of similar to Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, where it has this lore of being haunted, but there's really no evidence that there's much ghostly activity going on there. You do have 5 people who were murdered there. 3, I believe, out of the 5 were police officers who were patrolling, like guards. And then there were 3 suicides. So there are 8 people who have been deceased on Alcatraz. But out of all those years of being open from 1850 to 1974, that's really kind of crazy that there's not more, honestly. From my own perspective of being there, it really wasn't that spooky. It was much more informative, much more sad to see like the solitary confinement. And they talked about how when these people were in solitary confinement, it was so pitch black that they would end up making games for themselves, and they would pull buttons off of their shirts and throw the buttons in the room and basically spend eternity just looking for these buttons. They also had walls in there that were made of honeycomb. And if you had, excuse me, even just a little bit of light, they were basically counting the holes in the honeycombs. So it's really interesting and really cool to hear all of those stories, but it's also really sad. So again, being able to walk through all of Alcatraz was a little bit touristy, but was great. And then in the back, they have an entire Native American exhibit as well as US crime stats. So it's talking about lack of education and how does that lead to people who are put into penitentiaries. What were the stats back then versus what are they now? Should people who have certain marks on their record be able to vote? And so you get to put your little like nugget into the machine. So very interactive and again, very informational, very informative about the actual judicial system and putting people in prisons and the prison system as a whole. So I did really like it. Great opportunity to explore. Really, not a whole lot of areas that were blocked off. So it was really cool about Alcatraz. Now, I also got the opportunity to go to Winchester Mansion, which has been such a bucket list item. I mean, both of these places are, but Winchester Mansion for sure. And to me, the Winchester Mansion, for any of you who have heard me talk about Robert the Doll, has the same feeling. I went into the tour and the walkthrough of Winchester Mansion with just such high expectations. This is going to be amazing. Finally going to hear the story, finally going to see the house. And going in there, it was just like, oh my God, this feels so yucky. This feels disgusting. So before I get into sort of my theory, the process of Winchester Mansion, at Halloween time, they do have like a fright night. So that is pretty cool. But we went the tail end of that. So we just got the regular daytime tour. They do have little land outside that is very Disney Park-esque. They have a little shooting range with fake Winchester rifles. They have photo booths. They have a gift shop. They have the whole kit and caboodle for the touristy side of things. And then your tour is led by a very in-character tour guide. So the whole thing does feel just a little bit cheesy, but again, they keep you on track. They don't let you get lost in the house because it is very easy to do that. But you do get to take pictures, you get to take videos, you get to do whatever you want to do. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Winchester House, this is in San Jose, which is about 45 minutes south of San Francisco. And this is focused on the Winchester family. So Sarah Winchester in particular was married to the person who created the Winchester rifle. The story goes that after he passed away and her daughter passed away, that she thought that all of these spirits were cursing her and haunting her because of how many people have died because of this Winchester rifle. So the story is that she wanted to just keep creating all of these stairways to nowhere and walkways to nowhere and doorways to nowhere to trick these ghosts so that they wouldn't catch her. So she was alive from 1837 to 1922. The actual construction of the house took place from 1886 to 1922. So they stopped once she passed away, and the house was sold at auction before it was then in 1974 put as a historic landmark for the city of San Jose. So I do think that that is also interesting that Alcatraz was released to the public in 1973. Winchester was released to the public in 1974. So, we have back-to-back pretty interesting historic locations. The house as it stands today is 24,000 square feet and has 160 rooms. It has something like 50 fireplaces, 100 sinks. It's really crazy just how much money and expense and time has gone into the construction of this home. Now, there are a lot of things in this house that don't make sense. Like I said, there's doorways to nowhere, there's stairways to nowhere. The theory and the lore is that Sarah wanted to trick all of these spirits and kind of have them be lost in the house. But after going through it and also, again, like feeling the vibes of the house, like I said, it's very Robert the Doll-esque. I mean, she even has a dedicated seance room because story says that she wanted to communicate with her husband and her deceased daughter. But my theory is that she knew exactly what she was doing. And this whole thing feels like the night where you're not necessarily building stairways to nowhere, but rather you're building these tricks to kind of trick the demons into not realizing that there's another house. There was an earthquake in 1902 that caused Sarah to leave the house for a hot second. So that too, there's nothing really talked about where she actually went. And my theory more so is that, again, this is very Night House-esque. Like, I really think that Sarah Winchester knew exactly what she was doing, exactly what she was summoning. There's words that are on stained glass windows that make no sense, but are supposedly from a Shakespeare play. There are also stained glass windows of these ghosts that are burning in a fire. Like, she designed everything that went into this house. So to me, nothing is necessarily a coincidence here. And again, just the feeling of, I did not expect for this house to feel haunted, but it sure as hell did. There's one room in particular that was the seamstress room. And I don't know who lived there. I don't know the history. I haven't dug too deep into it. But that room more than the rest was just like, I felt so heavy. I felt, again, very similar to Robert the Doll. It was just like somebody was sort of sitting on my chest. And a couple other people in the group, they sort of agreed of just, this house doesn't feel right. So where my interest and intrigue and bucket list nature for Winchester House came from certainly now changed my dynamic to say that this Sarah Winchester, in my opinion, is really just a victim turned manipulator. So again, that's just my theory after being there and sort of feeling the vibes and understanding the structure a little bit better. But either way, Alcatraz and Winchester House, I would going and visiting either of these places. More so Alcatraz because there's a lot more to explore. Again, both of them were a little bit touristy, so just kind of have that in the back of your mind. But it is a really cool opportunity to get this slice of history and also feel these really more like paranormal ghost hunt vibes that are there. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a summary of Winchester and Alcatraz. I will talk about the Muir Woods, which is another place that we got to visit, which has a little bit more of a folklore side of things. So that will be for next week. But this Friday is the new Osgood Perkins movie called Keeper. So we're going to be doing a review for that movie on Friday. So thank you as always for watching. I hope you all had a wonderful, happy Halloween. And of course, every day is Halloween. So let's keep this train going. Thank you all, and I'll see you on Friday or next week.